Edgar, great to see you. Thanks for joining us. How the devil are you today?
Wonderful. Thanks a lot for this invitation. I think it's a really interesting opportunity to actually share part of my learning in this process, in this journey.
Good. Looking forward to it. So by way of introduction, Edgar, you are a CTO and founder of a company called FinCrime Dynamics, where you're doing some really interesting and exciting work around synthetic data and this concept of financial crime vaccines. So really interested to hear a little bit more about that, and I'm sure we'll get into to that soon. But yeah, let's start with you. The whole point of a diary of a CTO is to hear about your story, your journey, and we've obviously known each other for a little while now. But I think it's pretty fair to say you've got quite an incredible, and interesting and varied background in tech so far. Obviously, started out as a software engineer, and then you've done your PhD. You've been a researcher, and then an entrepreneur and a CTO. So yeah, it'd be great if you could kindly tell us a little bit about where it all began for you, and how you got into technology in the first place.
So thanks a lot for this nice introduction. I mean, you say already quite a lot, but just to give you a little bit overview about myself, I've been in the technology space for around 25 years. So I started early on as a student. I think that was the time of the dot-coms where everybody was building websites. And I of course, took a little bit of advantage of that. I'm originally from Colombia, so I fell in love with computers. I was early on many technologies, and I did actually an internship in the Netherlands in a company that was using very interesting technologies at that time. And we help some institutions to actually create websites faster. And that was one of the things that made this company very successful. That company, I left the company, I went back to Colombia, but that company became an unicorn. So it was acquired by another company. So that's one of the interesting stories about that. But I think my journey has been a lot around software development. I got a little bit, let's say, captivating by research. And I decided to move to Sweden to pursue studies. So I did a master's degree in Sweden, in Linköping University. Then I moved to do PhD studies. And I found an area that really brought a lot of passion to my background from Colombia, and it's the area of financial crime. And I was trying to shift a little bit my profile from being a software developer to become a data scientist. But then the first problem I had was data, and then from there my research derived into the generation of synthetic data. So this academic life was really nice. At that time, I was building a lot on ideas and dreams, and trying to make those dreams more from the theory to the practice, to building prototypes. So I created a couple of interesting prototypes in the area of synthetic data, and that caught the attention of the UK government. So I was brought to the UK 4 years ago to test my ideas with some prototypes. And now this is the time actually where the FCA is been on a journey of 4 years trying to invest some money on synthetic data. So there is a synthetic data group expert that is being consolidated this month. So I'm going to be in London this Friday talking to these people. So I think for me, the journey has been impressive. But just thinking about like how I became a CTO. So I saw a business opportunity on my research, and I started a company in the area of financial crime analytics using novel techniques based on synthetic data. I was the CTO, the CEO, the sole programmer. I started the company alone, and then when the government, Innovate UK, and some of their seed investors started to find this project attractive, I was able to actually enhance the team. So I brought a CEO, I brought 2 other co-founders, and I focused myself on the role of CTO. So that's probably the short answer on how I became a CTO.
Fair enough. Good stuff. So do you feel you've kind of done that entrepreneurial journey now? You've, like say, you've kind of worn many hats. You've been CEO, CTO, sole developer. Do you feel you were somebody that was always drawn to leadership versus staying as an an individual contributor? Because I think it's fair to say, you know, the best developers don't always make the best leaders. You know, don't always make the best managers necessarily, or best technology leaders. So, yeah, how did you make that decision to kind of move away from being, you know, purely technically hands-on and move more into the leadership space?
I mean, I still haven't left that sole developer role. I still get very focused on certain aspects, but I think the most important part is that you need to understand that when you have a vision, it's very hard to get from point A to point B alone. And then what you need to do is to start to build a team. Sometimes when you work alone, you can work very fast on certain things, but if it's like a sprint, you just get tired and don't go that fast. When you have a team, it's a lot more than you can do. So you maximize the scope. You create specialized people with tasks. You have diversity in the team that will help you to actually explore some areas that yourself will never do. So I think the key aspect here was that I have a vision. I wanted to build a company that makes a difference in the area of financial crime analytics. I thought that the situation was not ideal, and then there was a lot of evidence on that, and many people actually confirmed this. And this external validation helped to actually build this team, to motivate the team. I think now I'm probably I'm just trying to change a little bit my role from being hands-on all the code to try to drive the strategy. And I mentioned to you that one of my passions is actually to coach people, to mentor young software developers. So I'm actually building a strategic plan to enhance the capabilities with a combination of young talent and also experienced talent.
Wow, fantastic. Yeah, great. And you obviously clearly, like I say, still very technically at the coalface. How important do you feel that is? It's a conversation I often have with CTOs around, you know, the title CTO is very subjective, right? It means something very different in, you know, in a FTSE 100 company. It could be very different CTO to, you know, like say a incubator tech startup kind of organization. How important do you feel it is that, you know, in, I guess in an earlier stage business, you are technically deft and kind of at the coalface and able to kind of walk the walk as well as talk the talk? How do you feel about
I think it's very challenging to have all the skill sets that you're required to become a CTO from day one. But I think the important part is that the technical ability is very important. So if you have the technical ability, you will be able to talk to engineers and understand exactly their problems, their needs. You will be able to actually unblock some of the issues they're having. But I think one of the biggest transformations I would say in my role is that I needed to be able to actually communicate what we're doing to other stakeholders, to other people on the board, like the CEO, the rest of the investors, in a way that they understand. And that's not so easy. And I think the communication is one of the important skill sets that you need to develop when you become a CTO, because when you talk engineers to engineers, it's pretty straightforward. You don't understand something, you Google it now, you chat GPT it. But the important part is how to communicate what you're doing in a comprehensive way to the other people that are non-technical, that perhaps they don't see the work in the same way as you do. I have found myself in conversations with engineers about the technical beauty of what we're doing. But then with CEOs, they don't probably want to listen to that. They want to listen about the business value and what's the offering. So basically communication, trying to understand how you send the message across different stakeholders about what you're doing is quite important. And it's a constant journey. I mean, I've been rebuilding myself several times when things don't go the way I want.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I think it's a great point, and certainly something I would agree with from my, you know, all the CTO searches I've conducted throughout my time. Clearly, depending on the maturity of the business, the scale of the business, the ability and the need to be, you know, at the coalface, technically hands-on, still maybe contributing code, will vary greatly, depending on the situation. But I definitely agree with you. The kind of core thread that I see that runs throughout a lot of the great CTOs I've worked with is definitely the softer skills. It's the communication piece. It's the ability to engage stakeholders, take them on that journey. But like I said, it's that communication piece of, is somebody able to win the hearts and minds of people that aren't necessarily overtly technical, but get them to understand how what is being worked on and built technically is actually really going to improve their, job or ability and that kind of thing. So yeah, I definitely agree. Kind of seeing things from the business perspective, I think is the point at which people really move from being a strong technical resource to somebody actually that can kind of drive change through the business via technology. So yeah, so talk me through then your approach historically to, you mentioned a really good point there of, when you build a team, that's your point at which you can actually start to really scale something, because, clearly you got the people that can add value in other areas, that you necessarily wouldn't have the time to do. So talk me through your approach to how do you go about building teams, and do you have any kind of unified approach that you take to building tech teams from scratch when you look to hire?
So I would say the first thing that you need to do is to be creative, because there is a lot of constraints, in terms of time, in terms of priorities, in terms of skill set, in terms of money, and the conversations I have had with some stakeholders is that even if you have all the money you want to hire people, it's really hard to hire the right one. So there is always constraints, and the obviously it's better to have the problem of finding the people than finding the money. But perhaps the opposite is I would say, probably correct myself, perhaps the opposite is better situation to be, to have no money but have the right people, because then you try to find the money for that. But I think the approach I have taken is I need to find people that are highly motivated. I think that's the first part that I feel this is a concept that is valid even in the early startups and in a big company. I used to have a word that I try to avoid: mercenaries, people that just come for a job because they just want to have just an income, and then they just might do a good job, but the problem is that the IP of the company is also present in the know-how, in the talent, and then if you can retain this talent, I think it's a win for the company. So contractors are good to have. I think they are very valuable, but they fit some specific roles that perhaps I think my preference is to have people in-house to drive the core business. I think another approach that I take a lot is to try to create a growth path. I think many people join companies because they want to have some sense of growth, to master some skills. So I try to be close to the engineers, to try to be close to the people I manage, to understand what is a possible career path, that is a career path that I do not impose on them, but it's something that they choose. And of course they need to be clear that if the path that they chose it does not align with the company, perhaps it's not the right company for them. So I try to align these two things and try to see how they fit into the company mission and values. And I think it's been quite helpful. Sometimes we have had people in the early on stage, from practitioners doing internships. We also have hired people with a lot more skills, but the issue is that it costs money. So you need to balance the resources on those two. And yeah, that's probably the initial conception. Just give them a purpose and try to give them some career path to master it. And perhaps finally, if I might add, is to don't handhold too much. Like, try to empower them and give them some space for them to explore this creativity, because I don't think, especially in this area that is a little bit of a creative area, I don't think the engineers want to be told exactly what to do at every single time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think we obviously spent quite a bit of time together recently at a recent CTO roundtable, and I'm always really yeah, encouraged when I hear the refreshing approach from CTOs, which I think is kind of where we got to that evening was, yeah, that it's better to hire for attitude than it is for skills alone. And of course, like you say, there's always a need sometimes of a very specific bit of work, maybe get a contractor in that's got that particular skill set where they can come in, hit the ground running straight away. But generally speaking, if you're a scaling business, it's much more important to get somebody that is really bought into the vision and the mission of the business. And you know, they can obviously, like I say, I totally agree with you. When you get people, I think, that are fully aligned with the values and the mission, really excited by the mission, that's when they feel, you know, they can be really creative. And, you know, like I say, you get the best out of somebody that maybe if you worked in a more of a micromanagement environment where people weren't particularly excited or enthused by the mission of the business, then, you know, you don't quite get the same quality output. So yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And let's talk a little bit more about the work you're doing at FinCrime Dynamics. So when we first spoke, I was kind of blew my mind, really interesting with this whole concept of, you know, financial crime vaccine. So yeah, talk to us a little bit more about that. Obviously, it's your passion and your vision that you've mentioned to build a business in this space. So, so yeah, talk us about what you're doing.
I think the first part is that, as we mentioned before, we definitely needed to have a purpose. And I briefly mentioned that the situation is not ideal, and we sort of identify a gap in the market. So the gap in the market that we identify is that financial institutions spend a lot of money and time and effort in building financial controls that, unfortunately, there's plenty of evidence that they are not doing what they're supposed to do, or they are doing this in a sub-optimized way. So I think the key aspect is that we came out with a solution that we call the concept of financial crime vaccines, and this works very similar to the vaccine that we all know. So we create some sort of synthetic version of the virus that in this scenario is the financial crime behavior. And this behavior will help the body or the financial institution to understand better the threats. And once these threats have been identified, we help the financial institutions to optimize them, optimize the controls by measuring what, measuring the efficiency of the controls, measuring the gaps, and putting these gaps into the context of the risk appetite, and they will understand how to optimize the controls better, because financial institutions, even they are very wealthy, they don't have all the resources in the world to inspect every single transaction. That's a very time consuming, and many of us, we have had the problems and the issues of getting our credit card blocked, especially when we travel abroad, because it looks very suspicious. So we don't want to bother our customers. We don't want criminals to get away with profit. So our solution tackles that specific problem. So it's a very interesting concept. So the concept is quite new in the area. So we currently are working with a number of financial institutions in several tasks, dissemination. We call it clinical trials because we're also working hands-on with them. But the real effect or impact of what we're doing will be seen in the next couple of years. And I think one of the most interesting parts is that synthetic data is playing a key role in breaking the barriers of communication between institutions. Knowledge sharing is very important. And this is one of the key aspects that synthetic data is unlocking, the cooperation. So I mentioned previously that I will be in London this Friday talking to experts around synthetic data. And the FCA has recently published some reports saying that the use case that they want to explore is very related to what we're doing in the company. So it seems that we're doing something right.
Absolutely, yeah, perfect. Well, it's like you say, it sounds like you've really, well, clearly it's a big problem that you're solving, and one there's a real probably desire, I'm sure, from a lot of financial institutions to have a product like yours. And I think, yeah, we spoke about this before, but I also think just the concept from a, you know, I don't want to cheapen it by saying a marketing perspective, but the whole concept of, financial crime vaccines, I think, especially off the back of the last couple of years, with the pandemic and COVID and that kind of thing, it's obviously such a relatable concept. I think that people can really kind of wrap their head around as well, that, it must land, probably a lot better now, I guess, in the aftermath of the pandemic, when you're speaking to people, that people actually like, okay, yeah, kind of understand why we're doing this, and I guess that's a very positive thing for you guys as well. But just thinking about this synthetic data, and I guess sort of building this product from scratch, it feels like it's a problem that, like I say, from a creativity point of view, there's a whole wealth of different ways you can approach it, but it feels like a problem that actually will probably marry together quite a lot of both software engineering and kind of data science approaches when it comes to, the synthetic data piece. So yeah, how do you kind of see that sort of panning out in terms of the approaches that you'll sort of take to this problem?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a solution that requires a very strong component of technical pieces. So the data science part is fascinating. I think everybody has seen in the recent years the capabilities that AI has to solve complex problems. I think one of the biggest restrictions of AI is data, and the data is basically the fuel for the engine of machine learning. So the value proposition that we have around synthetic data ticks a lot of the boxes that the concept of financial crime vaccine is getting. I think the key aspect here is that software in software testing is really important. And when we deploy controls without proper testing, without assessing the scenarios that haven't been seen before, I think we take a high risk, and then this risk is basically converted into a cost for the financial institution. So what we're trying to do is to actually minimize that with technology.
Yeah, absolutely, makes a lot of sense. What do you feel has been, I guess, in this? It's quite a pioneering area of tech, and like I say, a lot of the biggest findings probably yet to be, yet to sort of come out in the next couple of years. But so far on this journey, what have been some of the kind of unforeseen or the biggest challenges that you've faced when building out this concept, building out this product as a technology leader?
Yeah, I think from a technical perspective, we were working on cutting edge technology. So people like me were not available out of the box in the market. So it was really hard to actually find people that have this matching concept of domain expertise in financial crime, and at the same time expertise in generation of synthetic data. Yeah. And just to end up the expertise in machine learning to actually build the controls. So those kind of expertise or marrying those expertise are really hard, and I think the market is now being more aware that synthetic data engineers are required. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot more understanding since 10 years ago when I started to write my papers about how useful would be to use synthetic data, because I think most of the data scientists approach is that we have enough data, so why we should bother about synthetic data. So some of the approaches of the domain experts is that we have so much data that we just can't cope up with all this information, and every day that we see something, sometimes it's new because the crime evolves a lot. So there is there is a lot of need to actually match the domain expertise with the technical capabilities to actually tackle the problem in a real way. So there is definitely a lot of challenges in finding people that are ready for working in companies like us. I would say some of the challenges, and that lucky for us, the gap is less and less, is that the processing capabilities that AI requires, and also some technical solutions are quite high and demanding. But lucky for us, I think the cloud computing solutions around that allows this scalability are matching our demands. So I think that's probably one of the things why these kind of solutions were not built 10 years ago, because it was very expensive. So
Yeah.
now we're getting to the point that the solutions can be built in a cost efficient way.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess cloud has got a real direct impact on that, hasn't it, in terms of being able to actually scale in a relatively cost efficient way. But that's a really good point you make about obviously that sort of profile, I guess, that kind of Venn diagram of those different overlapping areas of the kind of person that's going to fit within the business and really add value to what you're doing. But like I say, hopefully with awareness greatening in the market, it's going to become exponentially easier to find these people, and it feels like you're right at the crest of the wave, sort of ahead of the rest of the market. So fingers crossed you can kind of position yourself as the authority in the space, and attract a lot of talent organically as a result of that, hopefully. Okay, fantastic. Well, really enjoyed the chat, Edgar. I think it's really very interesting work that you're doing, and I love your backstory and kind of how you've got to the place you've got to. Clearly a really deep passion and a mission, and I think that's, I mean, just my own personal journey, I think that's really important, that the leader of any business has real vision and a real passion for the mission that they're on. It's the reason I started True North in the first place. It's something I'm kind of less bothered about how quickly we get from A to B, and I'm more bothered about how we get there with the right people and people that buy into the mission and buy into the vision. So I think it is a very important thing of a leader of any business to really have. I look forward to keeping abreast of all of your big wins and development in future. I like to end every podcast by asking the same question, which is, if there was one favorite piece of advice that you had gathered over the years, or your one favorite piece of advice that you'd like to pass on to your fellow humankind, what would that be?
I think one of the key aspects to succeed in as a CTO, or probably in any task that you dream of accomplishing, is perseverance. So if you persevere, if you don't give up, if you every day you incrementally do something, you're gonna be faster than anyone that is not trying at all. So if you really want to get to a point that your dream is materialized, the only thing you need to do is to put effort in the right direction. So don't give up that easy. And sometimes we try things that don't work, but just take those as learning experiences and move on.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great way to end. And I think absolutely, I see that as the real role of a leader, is to almost reframe failure for people that they're kind of coaching and mentoring. Because I totally agree with you. Certainly in recruitment, the first kind of year of anybody doing this job is just failure left, right, and center, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a good thing, and that's the way you learn. And a winner, one of my favorite quotes is, a winner is a loser that didn't give up. That's true. Everybody loses. Everybody
Totally agree with that. Yeah.
And you just got to keep moving forward, and like I say, take that perseverance on board. So fantastic. Well, Edgar, thank you very much again for taking part. Great episode. Really enjoyed the chat, and very much look forward to keeping in touch. Best of luck with FinCrime Dynamics. I'm sure you'll go from strength to strength, and we'll definitely be keeping my eyes and ears posted for your future successes.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here.
No worries at all. Take care. Bye for now.